Hello, and welcome to this session on the Bumblebee Conservation Trust's BeeWalk survey scheme. So in this session, we're going to cover all the basics about how to get started and get involved with BeeWalk. BeeWalk is the national monitoring scheme for bumblebees across Britain, gathering abundance as well as distribution data for our different bumblebee species. So we're looking at not only where the bumblebees are, but how many there are. And it's this data that allows us to report on trends in bumblebee populations and how these have been changing over time. So the scheme has been running since 2008. So we've got a really large data set, which allows us to get a really interesting insight into what's happening with our bumblebee populations. So we're also able to look at it to investigate things like the changes in relation to changes in habitat and land use and climate. The basic method is that BeeWalk volunteers walk a fixed monthly transect from March to October inclusive. Transects are between 1 to 2 kilometres long, split into multiple sections based on habitat. Bumblebees are identified and counted along the different sections of the transect, and data is submitted to the Trust via the dedicated BeeWalk website. So we've got hundreds of fantastic bee walkers out collecting data for us. So what happens to that data once it's submitted? So data is downloaded from the BeeWalk website and it's put through verification and validation processing. This identifies any unusual records, such as rare species in areas we wouldn't normally expect to see them. We can then follow this up with a recorder and find out some more information. So analysis is performed annually in-house, and this is to produce population trends. And we produce this information in our BeeWalk annual reports, of which all the previous reports can be viewed on the BeeWalk website. So data is uploaded annually to various online data sharing platforms, such as the National Biodiversity Network Atlas. So the BeeWalk dataset is publicly available, and we want it to be shared as widely as possible. So it's used in collaboration with and externally by various research institutions. So the more people we've got looking at the BeeWalk dataset, the greater the outcome for bumblebee conservation. So at the moment, we don't have a system for downloading your own verified records from the BeeWalk website, but if you drop us an email at beewalk@bumblebeeconservation.org, we can send you out a copy of your data. So to get started with BeeWalk, head to www.beewalk.org.uk, have a look at the resources page initially and read through our full guidance document. When you're ready to get involved, you can click on the Here to Register button, and that'll set you up a BeeWalk account for the website. Also have a go at our bumblebee identification quiz. So this isn't a pass or a fail, it just allows us to see what level of bumblebee ID you're starting at. So the next thing to do is to start thinking about where you want to set up your transect. So it should be somewhere that's easy to access, as we do want you to go out and survey it once a month between March and October year on year. So it needs to be somewhere where there is some flower-rich habitat, so some bumblebee-friendly areas. So do a preliminary walk where you go out and head through the transect to see what different habitat types you have, what length it is. So we ideally suggest transects are around 1 to 2 kilometres in length. This is to make sure they don't become too long, so the time commitment is too much and prevents you from surveying it regularly. So bear in mind that if you're setting up your transect in, for example, March, you're going to see a lot less bees and it's going to take you a lot less time than it will, say, in July, where you've got large bumblebee numbers out and about. So transects should be divided into at least 3 separate sections. This is normally based on habitat type. But if your transect is all one habitat, that's absolutely fine, but still please split it into at least 3 separate sections. Instead of splitting it when one habitat ends and a new begins, split it by a waypoint that's familiar to yourself, or a logical point where it makes sense to you for one section to end and the next one to begin. So we want you to give us some information on the habitat and land use for each of those sections. So we've got some forms that you can take out with you, and you can download these from the resources page on the website. So a habitat and land use site detail form allows you to record the habitat and land use you see for the different sections on your transect. So we use a predefined habitat and land use classification system. This enables our data to be comparable with different data sets. So choose the habitat which best matches the one on your transect in each section. If you're struggling with this, send us an email and we can help you finalise that process. When you're happy with your route, head back to the BeeWalk website and log in. and go to the My Sites tab and click Add Site, and enter the basic information for your transect. So select a transect name, choose a name based around the location, the site where your transect is. Now you can use the map to zoom in to find your grid reference. There's a search box where you could enter your town, your city, village, gets you a bit closer. Then use the scroll function to zoom right into the location of your transect. Click a central box to your transect and this will set the central grid reference for that transect. And add in the county, the number of sections you split your transect into. Don't worry about the overall length, that'll be auto calculated once you've drawn your route. And then enter the year that you're setting up the transect. This will register that as a new transect location with us, and you can then go on to draw your route. So it will zoom you into the location of your transect, and you dot to dot style, click with your mouse every time that there's a change on that route that you're walking for each separate section. So we do have a full guidance video on how to register a transect on the website. So have a look at that if you need a bit more detail here. So you're going to draw the section, move on to the next one, and then when you've finished all your sections, you'll have your route mapped. You can do some editing at this stage, so there's an edit button, a little square with a pencil, which you can use to slightly change the location of that section if you need to move it around a little bit. Once you're happy with it, you can move on to the section details tab, and it's here you add in that habitat and land use information. So add as much as you can, but at a basic level we need the principal habitat and the primary land use, so the main habitat that you're seeing and the main land use that you're seeing. So add this in for each section, and then that's your transect registered. We process new registrations weekly, so we check through them, check that the map looks okay, it's got all the habitat and land use information that we need. We'll then send you an email once it's approved and ready to go, or if it needs some changes or some extra information adding in, we'll email you and let you know and help you finish off that process. So there's a few things to think about before you start to get ready to survey your transect. So identification training. So it is really important you have a basic understanding of bumblebee ID before you head out surveying. So we have a variety of online live training sessions available, particularly at the beginning of the survey season. We do also run in-person training sessions, but these are more often than not linked to individual Bumblebee Conservation Trust projects on the ground, so they can be quite limited in where they are located. But have a look at the Bumblebee Conservation Trust website for where our projects are based, and the events calendar will also show any in-person training sessions coming up. If you can't attend any live sessions, whether that's in person or online, we've got lots of pre-recorded sessions available on our YouTube channel, right from beginners through to intermediate through to more detailed information on our cuckoo bumblebees, our carder bumblebees as well. So have a look, there's lots of information out there, and we do add to that when we can. We also share ID quizzes in the BeeWalk e-news, so make sure you signed up for that. If you're not, send us an email and we can make sure you are. So have a look through the BeeWalk Health and Safety Guidance form and print off the monthly recording form as well. So BeeWalk is undertaken at your own risk, so we want to make sure you're aware of the potential issues in terms of your health and safety when you're out surveying. So read through this. If when you're surveying at any point you feel unsafe, please stop surveying and then get in touch with us and we can see where we can go from there. So make sure you take out our monthly recording form with you. This will make sure you're recording all the basic information that we need for when you're submitting data. So choose a good day for doing your survey that month. Survey ideally between 11 AM and 5 PM. Now the perfect survey conditions would be sunny, warm, no rain, minimal wind. We do appreciate it's not always possible to find one date that meets that in the month, particularly the earlier or the later end of the season. So choose the best day you can for that month, bearing in mind your availability as well, obviously. Avoid strong winds and heavy rain. You're not going to see bumblebees, so you're not going to see many, and it's not going to be very pleasant for you to do that survey. So choose an ID guide to take out with you and have a camera where possible. Most people's smartphones have got cameras, so that's great. So there's a variety of ID guides available. It's about finding one that works best for you. The Trust produced one a few years back, and there's lots of other well-known ID guides the Trust produce small fold-out pocket guides as well. We've got a PDF of our common species available to download from the BeeWalk website too. So choose the one that works best for you. And there are a couple of apps available on phones as well. So being able to photograph bees can be really helpful for identification. It allows you to spend some time at home after your survey to have a closer look. We fully appreciate it's not always easy to get a good picture of a bumblebee, and I've got far more fuzzy, blurry photos than nice photos, but do persevere, they can be really helpful. So there's some key features you'll need to photograph if you want to be able to reach an identification. So the head and the face is really useful. So for some species, the face shape is useful for splitting between them. The colour of the hair on the face is also useful for splitting between some species, the cast, so whether we're looking at a male or a female. Getting a picture of the hind leg, useful for separating out cast as well. And that side picture that gives us a clear idea of what the banding pattern is helpful for ID purposes. And getting a picture of the tail tip is really important. Often that's the starting point for identification. So a net, pots and a hand lens, really helpful for ID, particularly when we're looking at rarer species or harder to identify species. Now we do appreciate not everyone's necessarily going to be comfortable catching bees for identification purposes. So it's completely up to you. But we do have links to where to get the equipment and also a guidance video on our website about how to safely catch and pot a bumblebee for identification purposes. So if this is something you want to do have a look at that information. So when you're ready to do your survey, you want to record your basic survey details when you're at your site. So our monthly recording form will make sure you capture all the information that you need. So your date, your site, your start and finish time, and your weather conditions. Really important to capture those. So walk to your transect at a slow and steady pace. Try and be as consistent as possible. Don't linger in hotspots or zoom through sections where you don't think you're going to see any bees. If you do this, you might actually miss bees because you're zooming through. But equally, don't spend 20 minutes hanging around a fantastic lavender patch because you're going to start to bias your results and probably multiple record bees. So we do appreciate you will need to stop to have a closer look for identification purposes, particularly at the earlier stages in your ID journey. So that's absolutely fine to stop, but just make sure you're not hanging around for too long and that you carry on walking at a slow and steady pace for the rest of your transect. So the idea is that we think of ourselves as having an invisible recording box. So we're recording all the bees we see within this box. So if we think of ourselves as the central back point of the box, so we're recording 2 meters either side of us, from the ground to 2 meters up and up to 4 meters ahead. So this allows us to standardize the method across different habitat types. So if, for example, you were surveying in a wide open meadow, your field of vision is going to be wider. If you were surveying in a narrow lane with high hedgerows, you're not going to see as far. So having this recording box just means we can standardize it across different habitat types. If you're recording in a group, make sure to designate roles. So for example, you'd have one person who is the recorder, one person is the spotter, and everyone can help with ID. Again, it just makes sure we're standardizing across transects where only one person is surveying and transects where there might be a group heading out. So record what you see within this recording box. So where possible, record the species, the cast, and the number. So you can catch bees for closer inspection if you're happy to do that. It is really useful for going to that next level in terms of identification. If you're not sure of a bumblebee that you're seeing, you can record it as an unknown species. You can also record a known cast, so you might know the species. For example, you might know it's a common card, but not sure if it's a male or a female. Pop it in the unknown cast column. White and buff-tailed bumblebee workers are very similar and can be really difficult to split out in the field. So we've got a separate category for recording those. Record honeybees and the forage plants as well if you're up on your plant ID. So you can record the different plants that the bumblebees are feeding on. So please do survey even in those months that you don't think you'll see any bees. For example, March, particularly the further north you go in Britain, sometimes you're not actually that likely to see bees, but no bees seen is important data for us. So please go out and do your survey and submit that you've done a survey but not seen any bees. So take photos of anything unusual where you can, so particularly if you think it might be a rare species or it's something you've not seen before, and add this to your notes, to your recording sheet. We can then follow that up when we come to verification of records if we need to. So when you've completed your survey and you've got home, particularly if you've got photos, so seek help where required if you're not sure of the ID. So the Bees, Wasps and Ants Recording Society have a fantastic Facebook page where you can post pictures and people will help out with ID. You can come to us for some advice at BeeWalk at bumblebeeconservation.org. Check back through our ID training videos, our guidance videos. Stephen Falk is a fantastic entomologist and he's got a great resource on the Flickr photo sharing website. He's got albums for each bumblebee species, so if you've got pictures that you can use to compare, it can be really helpful in terms of getting to an identification. So when you're happy, you can submit the data to the BeeWalk website. We've got a data deadline of the end of the calendar year. So ideally submit your results as soon as you can, because we do some mid-season updates. But as long as it's all in by the end of the calendar year, that's fine. So log into the BeeWalk website and click on My Walks. This will take you through to a calendar when you can select the date that you did that survey. Enter the basic information about that survey. So your site will be in a drop-down list on the location. If you're not seeing your site there, drop us an email because there's been some issue about getting the transect approved. The date and the recorder name will autofill. Enter your start and end time, so in 24-hour clock format, and record the basic weather information that you collected when you did your survey. It'll then take you through to Your Observations page. So this is the page where you're going to add in all the bumblebee data that you recorded on your survey. So the first column is species. So you can start typing in the common bumblebee name or the Latin, and that'll bring you up a list, and select the name from that list. Choose the section number that you saw that species in, and then the number of queens, workers, males or unknowns. Here you can add in the flowers that you saw the bumblebees foraging on. If you don't have this column here and you would like to submit that data, just send us an email and we can make sure that column's added on for you. If you've got any extra information such as nest searching behaviour or mating behaviour, you can add that in the comments. So you work through all the species that you've recorded on your survey sheet. If you want to record an unknown bumblebee, if you type in bumblebee, it'll give you an option for bumblebee/bombers. To select that, then we know you've seen a bee, but you weren't sure of the species. If you start typing in white/buff, you'll get the white/buff-tail worker option. So use that where needed. Always make sure that you're including the section ID. So it can be really easy to be so busy putting in your species data to forget to put the section ID that you saw that species in. And it is the most common issue we see with data not being saved. So if you go to submit data and it brings you up an error message, just come back to the Your Observations page and check that all your section IDs are filled in. If you're still having trouble submitting data, please take a screenshot of any error messages you get, a screenshot of the Your Observations page, and email it through to us and we can help figure out what's happening. Now, if you want to record that you've done a survey but not seen any bees, you just need to leave the Your Observations page blank. And then when you move on to the next step, we've got a comments box where you can put no bees seen, and then submit that to us so then we know you've done a survey but you've not seen any bees. When you're entering species into the species list box, be careful to be selecting the bombus. So we do have some solitary bees that have quite similar common names to our bumblebees, so just make sure you're selecting the bombus when you're choosing the species. So just to reinforce that if you're ever unsure about a bumblebee species, submit it as an unknown rather than taking a guess. That's absolutely fine, and we appreciate, particularly if you're newer to bumblebee ID, you're going to be recording lots more unknowns, and that's absolutely fine. In terms of where to go to get some additional help, and you can go through everything that we've talked about today. If you go to the BeeWalk resources page on the BeeWalk website, we've got our full guidance document. We've got links to the guidance videos on the YouTube channel. So please do check this out. It's really useful. So we've got a video on registering a BeeWalk transect and submitting data, which goes through the actual steps of using the website. And we've got lots of different ID training videos here as well, and we will add to them where we can. If you've got any questions, you can email that through to the BeeWalk team at beewalk@bumblebeeconservation.org. Throughout the survey season, we will be offering monthly online guidance sessions as well. So if you want to find out about the dates for those, just drop us an email and we'll let you know. Thank you.